Mrs. Ellis, this is Officer Martinez. We have your children at the station. My heart stopped as I gripped the phone tighter, trying to process what I was hearing. It was 2 a.m., and I was exhausted from my hospital night shift, but those words jolted me awake like a bolt of lightning. What? My children should be with their grandmother. I'm working the night shift. My voice trailed off as panic started to set in. Ma'am, your neighbors found them wandering in the snow around midnight. They were outside your mother-in-law's house for hours. They're safe now, but quite shaken up. We need you to come to the station immediately. I felt like I was going to be sick. My babies, Lily, 8, and Jake, 6, had been left out in the freezing cold by their own grandmother. I'll be there in 15 minutes, I managed to say before hanging up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely text my supervisor that I had a family emergency. As I drove to the station, memories from earlier that evening flooded back. Margaret, my mother-in-law, had agreed to watch the kids during my night shift. She'd watched them dozens of times before, though always with an undercurrent of resentment. Ever since David, my husband, passed away 2 years ago, she'd made it clear she blamed me for having to parent my grandchildren while I worked. When I dropped them off at 6 p.m., she'd been oddly dressed up, wearing an expensive dress and jewelry. Still, she'd let them in with her usual tight smile and dismissive wave in my direction. I should have known something was wrong. I should have trusted my gut when Lily had clung to my leg a little longer than usual. The police station was brightly lit against the dark winter night. Officer Martinez met me at the door, his expression grim. Your children are with our child advocate now, he said, leading me down a hallway. They're cold and frightened, but otherwise unharmed. However, we need to discuss what happened. We entered a small room where a woman in her 30s sat with my kids. Lily and Jake were wrapped in blankets, clutching hot chocolate. The moment they saw me, they burst into tears. Mommy, they cried in unison, running into my arms. I held them tight, my own tears falling as I felt how cold they still were. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, found them huddled under a bush in your mother-in-law's front yard, Officer Martinez explained. According to your children, Mrs. Ellis had plans to attend a dinner party. When they accidentally spilled juice on her dress, well, perhaps you should hear it from them. Lily, always the protective big sister, spoke first. Grandma got really mad when Jake spilled his apple juice. She said we ruined her fancy dress and her special dinner plans. She started screaming that she was sick of babysitting us, and Lily's voice cracked. Jake continued in a small voice. She pushed us outside and locked the door. She said we could come back when we learned to behave. But she never came back, Mommy. We knocked and knocked. The child advocate, who introduced herself as Miss Thompson, spoke softly. The children tried to stay warm under a bush. They were afraid to leave the yard because they thought their grandmother might come back. Mrs. Chen found them around midnight when she heard Jake crying. I felt a rage I'd never experienced before building inside me. Margaret had always been cold, always made it clear she thought I wasn't good enough for her precious son. But this, leaving 2 small children outside in the middle of winter? We've been unable to reach Mrs. Ellis, Officer Martinez added. Her car is gone, and she's not answering her phone. Given the circumstances, we've had to contact Child Protective Services. They'll need to conduct an investigation. An investigation? I whispered, holding my children closer. Standard procedure when children are abandoned or endangered, Miss Thompson explained gently. We need to ensure their safety and document what happened. We'll also need to discuss a restraining order against Mrs. Ellis. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Had to attend an important dinner party. The children were misbehaving. Don't be dramatic. A little cold never hurt anyone. They needed to learn respect. I showed the text to Officer Martinez, whose expression hardened. This will be helpful for our report, he said, taking a photo of my phone screen. Mrs. Ellis clearly admits to leaving them intentionally. Lily tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can we go home? We're really tired. Of course, baby, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We're going home right now. As we left the station, Miss Thompson handed me her card. We'll need to meet tomorrow to discuss next steps. Try to document any other incidents with Mrs. Ellis you can remember. And Mrs. Anderson, don't respond to any messages from her. Let everything go through official channels now. I nodded, too exhausted and emotional to speak. As I buckled my children into their car seats, I could see them finally relaxing, knowing they were safe. But I couldn't relax. This was just the beginning of what promised to be a long battle with my mother-in-law. What Margaret didn't know was that I'd been documenting her behavior for months. The snide comments, the neglect, the emotional abuse. I'd started keeping records after she'd forgotten to pick Jake up from school, leaving him waiting in the cold for 2 hours. I had texts, emails, witnesses. She thought I was a pushover, a weak woman who needed her help to raise my children. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, while Lily and Jake slept in my bed, my phone exploded with messages from Margaret, each one more manipulative than the last. "You're overreacting. Children today are too coddled. I had important people to meet. You should be grateful I watched them at all. David would be so disappointed in how you're turning his children against me." I ignored them all, focusing instead on documenting everything for my meeting with CPS. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, had already sent me security camera footage from her house. The video clearly showed Margaret screaming at my children before pushing them outside and driving away in her Mercedes. The timestamp showed she left them at 6:45 p.m., nearly 6 hours before they were found. At 10 a.m., Margaret showed up at my door, unannounced. I watched through the peephole as she repeatedly rang the doorbell, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing the button aggressively. "I know you're in there," she called out, her voice sickly sweet. "Don't be childish, dear. We need to talk about this little misunderstanding." Little misunderstanding? My children could have frozen to death. I recorded her entire performance on my phone as she continued. The kids were being difficult. "I had an important dinner with the country club board. They're considering me for president, you know. I couldn't miss it because your children can't behave." Just then, Miss Thompson from CPS pulled up in her car. Margaret's face twisted with rage when she saw the official vehicle. "You called CPS?" she shrieked, dropping her polite facade. "How dare you? I'm their grandmother. I have rights." Miss Thompson approached calmly, her badge visible. "Mrs. Ellis, I'm Sharon Thompson from Child Protective Services. We need to discuss the events of last night." "This is ridiculous," Margaret spat. "She's turning my grandchildren against me just like she turned David against me before he died." I felt a familiar pain at the mention of David, but this time it was overshadowed by anger. Margaret had always implied that David's choice to drive that night 2 years ago was somehow my fault, as if I had caused the drunk driver to hit his car. "Mrs. Ellis," Miss Thompson said firmly, "you left 2 minor children outside in freezing temperatures for several hours. This is a serious matter that requires investigation." "They were being difficult," Margaret protested. "Sometimes children need tough love." Back in your day, I interrupted, finally opening the door. "Leaving children to freeze wasn't considered acceptable either. You abandoned them to attend a dinner party." Margaret's face reddened. "Well, if you didn't work night shifts like some common nurse, I wouldn't have to watch them at all." "Mrs. Ellis," Miss Thompson interjected, "I have the police report here, along with your text messages admitting to leaving the children intentionally. We need to discuss the consequences of your actions." Just then, Lily appeared behind me, her small face hardening when she saw her grandmother. "You left us in the cold," she said quietly. "Jake cried for hours." Margaret's expression shifted instantly to one of fake concern. "Darling, you know Grandma loves you. You were being naughty, and I just stepped out for a minute." 6 hours, Ms. Thompson corrected, checking her notes. "You left them outside for 6 hours while you attended a dinner party." The security footage confirms this. The color drained from Margaret's face at the mention of security footage. "What footage?" "Mrs. Chen's security cameras captured everything," I explained calmly, "including you pushing them outside and driving away. The timestamps don't lie, Margaret." For the first time, real fear crept into Margaret's eyes. Her carefully constructed image of the doting grandmother was crumbling, and we both knew it. "This isn't over," she hissed, turning on her heel. "I'll call my lawyer. You'll regret this." "Document everything," Ms. Thompson advised. "Every call, every text, every attempt to contact you or the children. We'll add it all to the file." After Ms. Thompson left, I sat with Lily on the couch, stroking her hair. "Are you okay, sweetie?" She nodded slowly. "Mommy, why does Grandma hate us?" My heart broke at her question. "She doesn't hate you, honey. She's not well." She makes bad choices, but that's not your fault. It's never your fault. Is she going to take us away? No, baby, never. Mommy won't let that happen. As if to punctuate my promise, my phone buzzed with another text from Margaret. You've made a huge mistake. I have powerful friends. We'll see who the courts believe, a grieving grandmother or an overworked single mother who leaves her children with others. I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Margaret had always used her social status and connections as weapons, but she'd finally gone too far. Her mask had slipped, revealing a cruel woman beneath the polished exterior. What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment. Every incident, every cruel comment, every time she neglected the children, it was all documented. She thought she could bully me into submission, just like she'd always done. But this time, I wasn't backing down. This time, I was fighting back. 2 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom, watching Margaret's carefully constructed world crumble around her. Her expensive lawyer shifted uncomfortably as the security footage played on the screen. Crystal clear evidence of her pushing my children into the cold and driving away in her Mercedes. Mrs. Ellis, the judge's voice was sharp. Would you care to explain your actions? Margaret, dressed in her finest Chanel suit, tried to maintain her dignified facade. Your Honor, I was simply trying to teach them a valuable lesson about respect. In my day. In your day, the judge interrupted, child endangerment was still a crime. The temperature that night was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. These children could have died. I watched as Margaret's mask finally cracked. They ruined my dress. She burst out, her composure slipping. I had an important dinner. Do you know how long I've worked to become president of the country club board? I couldn't show up with juice stains. The collective gasp in the courtroom said everything. Even her lawyer winced. So you prioritized a dinner party over your grandchildren's safety? The judge asked, her voice heavy with disgust. They're always ruining everything, Margaret shouted, completely losing control. Ever since their mother started working those common night shifts instead of remarrying like a proper widow, David would be ashamed. Mrs. Ellis, the judge cut her off sharply. Your son would likely be more ashamed of a grandmother who abandoned his children in freezing temperatures. The truth of those words seemed to hit Margaret like a physical blow. For a moment, she looked lost, as if finally hearing how she sounded. My lawyer stood up, holding a thick folder. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of Mrs. Ellis's pattern of neglect and emotional abuse. Text messages, emails, and witness statements from teachers and neighbors. This wasn't an isolated incident. As the evidence was presented, I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet, all the times I'd made excuses for Margaret's behavior. Never again. The judge reviewed the documents carefully before looking up. Given the severity of this incident and the clear pattern of behavior, I am granting the permanent protective order. Mrs. Ellis, you are not to come within 500 feet of your grandchildren or their mother. Any contact must be approved by the court and supervised. You can't do this, Margaret shrieked, her carefully maintained aristocratic accent slipping. Those are my grandchildren. I have rights. Rights you forfeited when you left them to freeze, the judge responded firmly. You're fortunate we're not pursuing criminal charges. Though if you violate this order, that will change. Outside the courtroom, Mrs. Chen waited with Lily and Jake. She'd become like family these past weeks, helping wash the kids when I worked. The children ran to me and I hugged them tight. Is it over, Mommy? Lily asked. Is Grandma going to leave us alone now? Yes, sweetheart, she can't hurt you anymore. As if on cue, Margaret stormed out of the courtroom. When she saw us, she started toward us, but 2 court officers stepped between us. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll appeal. Mrs. Ellis, one officer warned, you're already dangerously close to violating the order. I watched as they escorted her away, her threats fading down the hallway. She looked smaller somehow, her power over us finally broken. That evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, Jake asked a question that broke my heart. Mommy, did Daddy know Grandma was mean? I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. Your daddy loved you both very much. He would have done anything to protect you, just like I will. I miss him, Lily whispered from her bed. Me too, baby, but you know what? He'd be so proud of how brave you both are. After they fell asleep, I sat in the living room looking at old photos. One caught my eye, David and me on our wedding day. Margaret had been scowling in the background, already disapproving. But David's smile was radiant as he looked at me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, clearly Margaret using a different phone. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy." I blocked the number without responding. She was wrong. I hadn't destroyed anything. I protected my children just as David would have wanted, just as I should have done sooner. The next morning, I woke to find Lily and Jake making breakfast. Well, trying to. The kitchen was a mess of spilled cereal and milk. "We wanted to surprise you," Lily explained anxiously. "Are you mad?" 6 months ago, I might have heard Margaret's voice in my head, criticizing their messiness. But now I just saw my children, happy and safe in their own home. "Not mad at all," I said, grabbing paper towels to help clean up. "But next time, let's make breakfast together, okay?" Their smiles were worth every battle, every court date, every moment of stress. We were free now, free from Margaret's manipulation, free from the constant criticism and fear. As we cleaned up together, laughing about their failed breakfast surprise, I knew we'd be okay. More than okay. We were stronger now, closer than ever. Sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest peace.